My name is Anita Bowser. I'm the interviewer today. Today is October 6, 2025. Can you tell me your name?
Dan Shirley.
Hi, Dan. And where are you from?
Well, there's a little story there because my dad was from Western Pennsylvania. He decided to quit high school about halfway through, but he turned out to be a very good machinist, and he worked for a small company in the Pittsburgh area, and somehow there was an opening or a problem in New York City, and he was sent by the company to work in New York City. In 1913, my grandmother immigrated from Russia. She had 3 daughters and a son, and the oldest daughter was my mother, Marie. And some set of circumstances, my dad and my mother met and were married in New York City. And this part of New York City is the Lower East Side, and that's where all the Eastern European immigrants settled. So anyhow, he continued his job there until 1939, and there was a recession and a depression, and he lost his job, and he came back to Western Pennsylvania to his old home, and we stayed with my grandparents, my dad's mother and dad. And while he was there, they decided to build a house. The house was built primarily from material from a barn that they had torn down. He and my grandfather dug the foundation by hand, wheeled all the contents out by wheelbarrow, and built the foundation and did 99% of the work with the house. And somehow my dad got an interview with National Tube in McKeesport, and it was a munitions plant. They actually make just a projectile, 90 millimeter, 155 millimeter. And my dad was able to get a job there as a laborer. But the family story goes, he was working around the machine cleaning up, and there was a group of guys that were having a problem, and they weren't having any success solving it. And my dad pops up in the back and says, well, why don't you do this, this, and this? And they go, who is this guy? And they did that, and it worked. And that started him up the ladder. And he actually became superintendent of that section before the war was over. Okay, now back on the home front, it became survival, really. We had a huge garden, which I remember first time was plowed by a team of horses.
Oh, wow.
And we had chickens, and the property was maybe 5 or 6 acres, all grown up. And they got 4 or 5 sheep, and they made the place look like a fairway after 3 or 4 years. But one of the things, of course, you had to have them sheared. The first guy came in with his clippers. Only trouble was they weren't electric powered, so we had to turn a crank that actually operated the shears so that he could cut the.
Wow.
We were never hungry or anything like that, but that's as far as it went. A big deal was ice cream now and then. Yeah.
And that was during the Depression?
Yes, this is probably 39 is when this started with him back in Western PA again. So anyways, as I said, the big deal was ice cream or something like that. And you kind of made do with what you had. There was only 3 or 4 kids in the neighborhood, and we'd do the bike riding, inventing baseball games, playing in the dirt, all that kind of stuff. But there were times when U.S. Steel went on strike. I remember my dad washing buses at the Lincoln coach lines was a bus line in our in our little town there. But thinking about the house a little bit, it's a story and a half. And if you got into storage areas where you couldn't stand up, you could see the yellow from the mail pouch signs. Just segments of that. And the house itself, you couldn't have a well. There was no city water because they had undermined, coal mining had taken. Oh. So we had a biblical house. We had a cistern. Water was captured from the roof, stored, and we used it. The heating was coal-fired furnace. And what came off that roof into the water, and we drank. I have no idea. But you did. I guess you did what you had to do to.
Well, you're still here.
Yeah, I mean that was. But the things were very, very, very simple, and your entertainment would be mostly church kind of organizations. That was the main mode of entertainment. And if you went to a movie, that was out of sight. And I think it was only probably in dime or a nickel to go to a show then. But anyhow, that's how we got it started, and that's how we got to New York, and then back home, and started there just in time for World War II to start.
Wow.
And there was a note on there to ask what I remembered about anything about World War II. I remember the headlines of the atomic bomb and D-Day. And it was our habit to, at least twice a year, to go back and visit my grandmother in New York City. And one of the months would be August, because at preschool we knew some areas of Lower East Side where people sold things off a push cart and that kind of thing. Oh, anyhow, August of 14th of 1945, we were in New York City to do what I described, and that turned out to be VJ Day, and we ended up in Times Square in New York City for the celebration.
Oh, wow.
And I was only 11 years old, so I didn't get to kiss the nurses like what was going on all around me, but we were back for that, and that was that sticks forever.
I bet.
And even today, I think you'd be standing in the crowd, and all of a sudden be almost like water moving. For no reason would you slide one way or another. And
wow.
But it was a wild scene, obviously. But that was one of the things from World War II. The other thing was I had an uncle was in the infantry, and they mobilized in North Africa, and he was in the invasion of Sicily, the invasion of Italy, partway up the boot in Italy, and then into invasion of southern France, and into southern Germany. Not a scratch for that whole, and he was in the front lines. The other thing he did, and then I don't know how he accomplished this, he was always sending things home. In his own place, he had flags, revolvers, German decorations, helmets, and I'd get the overflow from that. So to take to school, I'd take like German helmets, and I'd take daggers. Nobody would think of taking weapons. Nobody, this was a souvenir of what was going on at the time, and there I am with dress swords and daggers. I mean, that's how different it was. And of course, we had those drills in school where we went out into the hallway in case of attack. And we also we had a book, looked like old S&H stamp book, but you could buy savings stamps. And when you filled that book, you had $18.75, and that would give you a $25 bond. But that drive was done in school. I can remember they had V-mails then. You'd write a letter, and somewhere they'd photocopy it and shrink it, and that's how they reduced the size and weight of things.
Wow.
And then during the war, the car you had when it started, that was the car you had. And I can remember helping my dad was one of these guys that could seem like he could do everything. So he actually had the engine in that car, and I did the grunt, some of the grunt work. And then one of the things he did, which I never forget, the body of the car was coming apart, and he had to fill it with some kind of gunk that hardened. You sand it. But what I remember most of all, to paint it, he bought a big fly sprayer with a big tank, and he put the paint mixture in and sprayed that it was old Willys, made by come from the Bantam Company. It was made by someone else. And we collected scrap metal for the scrap metal drives. And one thing I ran across about 3 years ago, I remember one time milkweed, when it gets down the road, it's a fibrous growth on it. And we were asked to collect that. And it turned out the fiber was suitable for making life vests before fiberglass came along. And my mother would haul grease off to the butcher shop. We had I don't know what in the world they did with that, but that was one of the things I remember. And of course, the gas and food rationing. We made those at least twice a year trips to New York, and I'm sure my dad had to buy rationing stamps on the black market because how they determined how many stamps you got was how far you were from work, and that's how they set that priority. But that's some of the things I remember of the war years. I was in love with airplanes, all the B-29s and the P-51s, and P-38s, and I hoped to be as a kid I wanted to be a pilot, but the eyesight, there's no way. They told me if I landed a plane and said that was a smooth landing, I'd probably drop the last 30 feet. That's how bad my depth perception was. But that's some of the things I remember. We made homemade guns. You get a piece of wood that's thick and about that long. They had inner tubes in, and you put a handle on this thing, and that would hold the handle. You could go like that. Then you took one of these inner tube loops, tied a knot in it, stretched it back, and held it in place. And that would shoot, I imagine, 30 feet. Wow. So we'd have our own neighborhood gun battles. But again, it was a lot of, just make do.
Did you listen to the radio?
Yeah. And we had, it had been a Pittsburgh Sun Telegraph delivered to the door, and of course the radio. I have no recollection of Pearl Harbor, but I do remember the broadcast of D-Day and when the atomic bombs were dropped. Those stuck in my mind. But I think that pretty well summarizes my time in that time.
Okay, so then where about did you grow up? Like, was it?
Well, up to 5 years old, I lived in the neighborhood in New York City. Mm-hmm. Somehow my mother and dad both worked at that time, and my grandmother took care of me. And I was bilingual when I was 5 years old. I could speak Russian as well as anybody. Oh. But we moved. You lose it when you don't use it. So just vague recollections of New York playing around. But in near Irwin, where I was raised,
Okay.
that's where, the hide and seek and kick the can and all these old games of no cost games. But
And so, where did you go to school?
well, it's Norwin now, but it's North Huntington Township. And when I was in high school, I had two excellent teachers. One was a math teacher, and the other one was a chemistry teacher. And chemistry drove me. I mean, I thought I never saw anything like that. So from then on, I went to Pitt and got a chemical engineering degree from Pitt. Just the other day, I was talking to a guy. My tuition was $500 a year, and it's 40 times higher now. But Pitt was a commuter school, and a person like myself from the boonies was competing with city kids like Taylor Aldice. Some of those guys were just, I don't know, they could give you back whatever was said like that. But anyhow, there was 12 or 15 of us, including two women. This is 1952, and two ladies became chemical engineers. But it was a kind of a group somebody knew, and that got spread around. And we had all our classes together and all our break times together. So that's how this guy made it, just working your butt off and hanging on. But I should have gone back to that chemistry teacher. I kicked myself for not. I should have told him what the table he had set for me was really something.
And what did you do after school then?
After Pitt, I went to work had a short term with Copper's Company in the plastics division. But from then on till I retired, I worked for PPG in glass manufacturing, research, and engineering in both window glass and fiberglass. And then for a spell in the chemical division also. Worked downtown, worked in Mount Zion, Illinois, Clarksburg, West Virginia, back home a couple of times, and then North Carolina for the fiberglass. So that was quite a thing. I remember speaking to my grandmother in Pennsylvania as a young person. I said, boy, I'd really like to see California. I heard these stories. That would be like an impossible dream. That's the story I'd get back. Well, I've been to Japan and Germany and Taiwan and even it was a vacation, but I even got to St. Petersburg, Russia. And I told the gal I had to come here so I get some Russian dust on my on my shoes. But I told her I knew just only one phrase, and that was "Yayasnoya," which means I don't understand. Which she said that was a good phrase to have while you're here. But anyhow, that sometimes in a working career you do things you can't believe, when it's done. I mean, it may not mean a lot to other, but here and there and what happened, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Especially when you start out, I mean, there I am feeding sheep and chickens and hoeing up gardens. And next thing, later on in life, there I am doing a job in Japan.
Wow.
So that was something.
Where were you in Japan?
I think I was near Osaka. And in Taiwan, I was within spitting distance of Taipei. And Germany was just a hit and miss business trip. Mm-hmm. Some really, really beautiful country there.
Yeah.
And then I have to say something about the PPG experience, that's where I met my wife. So that's 13 has always been a lucky number for me. And darned if the exit to where I met her was exit 13 off of Route 28. That's that was one of the most fortunate, best things that ever happened in my life when I met my wife. That's she's something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when did you get married?
It was, let's see, 1962. And so we've been married, it'll be 62 years coming up on October 12th. I tease her by telling her, boy, it's really been tough.
That's an accomplishment.
Yeah, that's
a long time.
Well, and we're both very fortunate with the health thing. Like, I just use eye drops, and I was 91 in August the 13th. So.
Wow.
One thing I should have mentioned, on my 90th birthday, the whole family went back to New York City to the area where my grandmother was. She lived. That building must be 90 years old by now, and it's in very excellent shape. But I was able to take them to that area, tell them what's there and what used to be and what I used to do, and those it was. Talk about nostalgia. That was a heck of a trip with two granddaughters and my wife and two sons, and that was something, because the summer of '52 I was at an age that I couldn't get a summer job till August, because I think it was a rule about 18 or something. And one of my uncles in New York City says, "Hey, I can get you a job. I know the next door neighbor, and they're looking for a gopher in their machine shop." So I stayed with my grandmother and rode the New York Daily News, the subway out to the job site, and then on the weekends I just start walking somewhere. You could walk down to Wall Street probably less than an hour. So one time I got lost. I had to take a taxi cab to get back home to my grandmother's place. But that's why I was so familiar with that area on top of early. It would have been in '52. It's been essentially 3 months there. So,
wow.
But that's something.
And where do you live now? You live
in Butler.
in Butler. How did you end up here?
We're in North Carolina, and we decided we're coming back to Western PA because of the grandkids, and my mother was a widow in Ohio, and we're not a hot weather people, so we decided we didn't want an Allegheny County. And we started looking around Cranberry, and even then it looked too busy. And the realtor guy said, he had a book, and he said, he said, I have some properties in Center Township. And so we bought a place. It was a spec house, and that's how we ended up in Butler. But in the South, anybody that moves south for the weather, I'd recommend they spend the off season and see because honestly, in the summertime, you're looking out the windows too, because it's 90 degrees and 90 humidity, and your air conditioner is running from April to beginning of October. So, I'd say give it a test. And so it failed our test, I guess. And my southern buddies down here said that Yankees lost his mind. Nobody moves north. So that's the way that was. So, it's hard. it's hard to believe it's been 91 years. I mean, it's...
Wow.
And we moved back here when our guys were small. One of the activities was cross-country skiing. And we used a golf course. We lived then in the northern suburb of Pittsburgh, and we allowed to use a golf course for us four. But we came back to Butler when we had those almost continuous snows. We'd use the rails to trails. And for 4 or 5 years behind us, there was an old farm. The lady said we could go out there anytime we wanted. So that meant during winter, fall, we had to do a lot of walking so we wouldn't die out there. But we got to the point where no matter what the weather, we could stay out, 3 hours and still go someplace and eat lunch, But that part worked really, really well for us.
So you've seen a lot of changes over those 91 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Even in the world of TV, it would have been 1949 or 1950. My folks bought a TV set. Screen was this big, and over the front of it, they had a magnifying lens that gave you a screen about like that. As long as you looked head on, you're okay. If you got this way, people got skewed. But that was a happening, and I think that little set sold 1 million TV sets. The neighbors would come in, they wanted to watch some sporting event, and next thing you know, they're heisting one into their home.
So is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
I think that pretty much tells us a small story.
Well, I thank you very much for sharing your stories.
Oh, it was kind of here and there and everywhere, but
It's great.
but
That's how life is.
yeah, that's for sure.